It all started with one bed, a pillow wall, and a promise that nothing would change between them. But fate has a terrible habit of breaking deals, and when the heart gets involved, no plan survives for long. Madison Carter stared at her phone screen like it was a ticking bomb. 3 missed calls from her mother, 7 text messages from her grandmother, and 1 voice message from her younger sister that she absolutely, positively did not want to listen to. She pressed play anyway. "Maddie, oh my God, I have the most amazing news." Her sister's voice was so high-pitched it could shatter crystal. "Derek proposed. Can you believe it? We're getting married. Mom is already planning everything and, wait, you're still coming home for Christmas, right? You have to be here 2 whole weeks. It's going to be perfect." Madison let her head fall back against her office chair with a dramatic thud. Perfect. Of course it would be perfect. Everything in her sister's life was perfect. The perfect boyfriend, now fiancé, the perfect career, the perfect hair that never frizzed even in humidity. Meanwhile, Madison wrote about perfect love stories for a living and couldn't even get a second date. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was her mother. "Sweetheart, I'm preparing the guest rooms. Should I put you in the pink room? You know, the one we decorated for when you need some alone time to think about your choices." Madison closed her eyes. The pink room, also known as the spinster suite in her mother's passive-aggressive vocabulary. "Mom, I'm 27, not 70. "I know, dear, but your sister is 24 and already engaged to a surgeon. I'm just saying time moves differently for women. Your grandmother was married with 2 children by your age. Grandmother also thought the moon landing was fake and that microwaves cause brain cancer. Don't be disrespectful. She's just worried about you. We all are. If this story is touching your heart, show your support. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. Every action helps us keep bringing you new stories full of emotion." Madison pinched the bridge of her nose. This was going to be the worst Christmas of her entire life. 2 weeks of pitying looks, invasive questions, and watching her sister parade around with her perfect fiancé, while everyone whispered about poor Madison who wrote romance novels but couldn't find romance herself. "I have to go, Mom. Deadline." She hung up before her mother could launch into another lecture about biological clocks and the importance of putting yourself out there. Madison stared at her laptop screen. Chapter 12 of her latest novel mocked her with its blinking cursor. Her protagonists were finally getting their happy ending, a passionate reunion after weeks of longing, a kiss in the rain, a promise of forever. If only real life worked like her books. A knock on her office door made her jump. "Come in." Christopher Rivera walked in with 2 cups of coffee, and Madison felt her stomach do that annoying flip it always did when he appeared. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that somehow looked perfect even when messy, and those impossible blue eyes that seemed to see right through people. He was wearing his usual, expensive suit, perfectly tailored, making him look like he'd stepped out of a business magazine cover, which technically he had. Multiple times. "You look like someone just told you Christmas is cancelled," Christopher said, setting one of the coffees on her desk. He knew exactly how she liked it. 2 sugars, extra cream, a shot of vanilla. "Worse, my sister got engaged." Christopher raised an eyebrow. "And that's bad because now I have to spend 2 weeks watching her be perfect while my entire family asks me why I'm still single and offers to set me up with their dentist's cousin's son, who has a good job and only lives with his mother temporarily." A smile tugged at Christopher's lips, that rare smile that only she ever got to see. "Sounds terrible." "It is terrible. My mom already has me mentally moved into the pink room of eternal loneliness. My grandmother keeps sending me articles about freezing eggs, and don't even get me started on my cousin who thinks he's Sherlock Holmes and will probably interrogate any date I bring home." Madison grabbed her coffee and took a long sip, letting the warmth calm her nerves. Christopher sat on the edge of her desk, a casual intimacy they'd developed over years of friendship. He was her best friend, had been since they'd met at a charity gala 5 years ago, where she'd been dragged by her publisher and he'd been avoiding investors. They'd bonded over mutual hatred of small talk and a shared love of old movies. He ran a tech empire. She wrote love stories. Somehow it worked. "So what are you going to do?" he asked. Madison groaned. "Suffer in silence? Fake my own death? Join a convent? Pretty sure convents require religious conviction." I'm desperate enough to convert. Christopher laughed. A real laugh, not the polite corporate chuckle he used in meetings. She loved that she could make him laugh like that. There has to be a solution, he said thoughtfully, unless you know a single, successful, charming man who would be willing to pretend to be my boyfriend for 2 weeks just to get my family off my back. I'm doomed. The words hung in the air between them. Christopher's blue eyes locked onto hers, something shifting in his expression. Madison's heart did that stupid flip again. What if I did? He said quietly. Did what? Know someone. Madison blinked. Chris, I was joking. I'm not actually going to hire an escort or something. I'm not talking about hiring anyone. He set down his coffee, his gaze steady and serious. I'm talking about me. Time seemed to stop. Madison stared at him, certain she'd misheard. You? Why not? I'm single. So I'm successful, and according to Forbes, I'm moderately charming. The corner of his mouth lifted. Your family doesn't know me. I can play the doting boyfriend for 2 weeks. Chris, that's insane. Is it? He crossed his arms, and Madison tried very hard not to notice how the movement made his shoulders look even broader. You need a fake boyfriend. I need someone to edit all the communication materials for the company rebrand, and you're the only writer I trust not to make it sound like corporate nonsense. Fair trade. Madison's mind was racing. This was crazy. Absolutely crazy. Spend 2 weeks pretending to date her best friend, the man she definitely, absolutely, 100% did not have feelings for. You really want to spend Christmas dealing with my invasive family? She asked. I was going to spend it alone in my apartment anyway. At least this way I get good food and entertainment. Entertainment? Watching your cousin try to catch us in a lie sounds hilarious. Despite everything, Madison laughed. God, this was such a terrible idea. But also, and maybe the only idea that could save her from complete humiliation. If we do this, she said slowly, there would need to be rules. I excel at rules. And boundaries. Naturally. And we'd have to be convincing. My family might be overbearing, but they're not stupid. Christopher leaned forward slightly, and suddenly the space between them felt very small. Madison, I've closed billion-dollar deals. I think I can handle pretending to be crazy about you. Her breath caught. It was just acting, just pretending. So why did her heart feel like it was trying to escape her chest? Okay, she heard herself say, let's do it. Christopher smiled, not his corporate smile, but that real one, just for her. Then we leave in 3 days. Hope you're ready for the performance of your life. As he walked out of her office, Madison realized she'd just made either the best or worst decision of her entire life. Probably both. 3 days later, Madison stood in front of her closet, having what could only be described as a complete meltdown. What do you pack when you're fake dating your best friend? She muttered, throwing another sweater onto the growing pile on her bed. What says convincing girlfriend, but also, please don't get any ideas? Her phone buzzed. Christopher's name flashed on the screen. I'm outside. Ready? Madison looked at her bedroom. It looked like her closet had exploded. Nothing was packed. She was wearing mismatched socks and yesterday's mascara. Super ready, she texted back. Just grabbing my bags. She shoved clothes into her suitcase with the grace of a hurricane, zipped it with pure determination and prayer, and tried to look like a calm, collected adult as she wheeled it to the door. Christopher leaned against his sleek black car, looking like he'd stepped out of a cologne commercial. Dark jeans, a navy sweater that hugged his frame in ways that should be illegal, and those damn blue eyes hidden behind sunglasses. You look like you just ran a marathon, he observed. I prefer charmingly flustered. He smiled and took her suitcase, loading it into the trunk with effortless ease. Madison tried not to stare at the way his sweater stretched across his shoulders as he moved. This was fine. Totally fine. Just 2 friends going on a completely platonic fake dating Christmas adventure. Nothing weird about that at all. Once they were on the road, Christopher glanced over at her. So, ground rules. We should probably get our story straight. Right, story. Madison pulled out her phone and opened her notes app. Okay, how did we start dating? You tell me. You're the romance writer. That's not helpful, Chris. He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel thoughtfully. How about this? We've been friends for 5 years. 6 months ago, something changed. I showed up at your apartment with flowers because I decided I was done pretending I didn't have feelings for you. Madison's heart did a weird stuttering thing. That's actually really good. Did you Google that? I pay attention when you talk about your books. She ignored the warm flutter in her chest. Okay, so 6 months. That's enough time to be serious, but not so long that they'll wonder why they've never heard of you. What's my favorite thing about you? The question caught her off guard. Madison looked at him, and even though she couldn't see his eyes behind the sunglasses, she felt pinned by his attention. Maybe that I can make you laugh. You're always so serious with everyone else. True. He merged onto the highway smoothly. And your favorite thing about me? That you bring me coffee without being asked? She was aiming for light and teasing, but it came out softer than intended. And that you listen, really listen, not just wait for your turn to talk. Christopher's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. See? We already know each other better than most actual couples. They spent the next 2 hours quizzing each other on favorite foods, movies, embarrassing stories. Madison learned that Christopher secretly loved terrible reality TV shows and once got stuck in an elevator for 4 hours. Christopher discovered that Madison had a mild obsession with collecting vintage teacups and was allergic to strawberries. This is either going to be brilliant or a complete disaster, Madison said as they pulled into the small town where her family's apartment was located. I have confidence in us. You have confidence in everything. It's annoying. You love it. She did. That was the problem. The apartment building was exactly as Madison remembered. Charming brick exterior, flower boxes in the windows, the kind of place that looked like it belonged on a Christmas card. Her family kept it year-round, but mainly used it for holidays and summer visits. Ready? Christopher asked, grabbing both their bags like they weighed nothing. As I'll ever be. Madison unlocked the apartment door, and relief flooded through her. Empty. Her family wasn't arriving until tomorrow. They'd have tonight to settle in and prepare for the chaos. Home, sweet temporary home, she said, flipping on the lights. The apartment was cozy. Warm hardwood floors, comfortable furniture, a kitchen that smelled faintly of the cinnamon potpourri her mother loved. Madison gave Christopher a quick tour of the living room, bathroom, and kitchen. And the bedroom is... She pushed open the door and froze. One bedroom, one queen-sized bed. Oh no, she whispered. Christopher appeared behind her, and she felt him still as he registered the situation. I thought you said there were 2 bedrooms. There were when I was a kid. They must have renovated and combined them into one bigger room. Madison walked into the bedroom like she was approaching a crime scene. Sure enough, one bed. Neatly made with a cream-colored duvet and way too many decorative pillows. A single nightstand on each side, windows overlooking the street, and absolutely no couch. She'd checked the living room. Just 2 armchairs that definitely couldn't sleep a 6'3" man comfortably. I can take the floor, Christopher offered. Don't be ridiculous. You'll wake up with back problems, and then how will you be a convincing boyfriend when you're walking like a question mark? The armchair, then. And be unable to move for the entire holiday? Chris, it's fine. We're adults. We can share a bed. The words hung between them, suddenly heavy with implication. Are you sure? His voice was quieter than usual. Madison forced herself to sound casual and unaffected, even though her heart was doing gymnastics. Absolutely. We'll just put pillows down the middle, like in those old sitcoms. It'll be fine. Pillows down the middle, Christopher repeated, looking at the bed like it was a complex business problem that required strategic analysis. Look, if you're uncomfortable, you can sleep in the living room, and just make sure you're in here before anyone shows up in the morning. My mom has a habit of barging in with breakfast. No, it's fine. He set their bags down. We can handle this like rational adults. Exactly. Rational adults who are definitely not making this weird. Not weird at all. They stood there in awkward silence for a moment. I'm going to unpack, Madison announced, grabbing her suitcase and practically fleeing to the bathroom. She stared at herself in the mirror. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes were too bright, and she looked like someone who was absolutely, definitely making this weird. Get it together, Carter, she whispered to her reflection. It's just sleeping. People sleep near each other all the time. This is fine. When she emerged, Christopher had changed into sweatpants and a t-shirt that should have made him look casual and approachable, but instead made him look like every fitness magazine cover she'd ever seen. Bathroom's yours, she said, not quite meeting his eyes. That night they constructed the pillow wall with the seriousness of engineers building a bridge. 6 pillows, stacked strategically down the center of the bed. "This is ridiculous," Christopher said, but he was almost smiling. "This is survival." Madison climbed into her side of the bed, wearing her most modest pajamas, long pants, long-sleeved shirt, buttoned up to her throat like she was preparing for winter in Alaska. Christopher got in on his side, and Madison became hyper-aware of every sound. The rustle of sheets, his breathing, the way the mattress dipped slightly under his weight. "Good night, Madison." "Good night, Chris." She stared at the ceiling, willing herself to fall asleep and absolutely not think about the fact that her best friend, her devastatingly handsome best friend, was less than 2 feet away, separated only by decorative pillows. This was going to be the longest 2 weeks of her life, and they hadn't even met the family yet. Madison woke up slowly, consciousness returning in warm, comfortable waves. She felt safe, protected, like she was wrapped in the world's most perfect blanket. Except blankets didn't have heartbeats. Her eyes flew open. She was pressed against Christopher's chest, his arm wrapped firmly around her waist, their legs tangled together beneath the sheets. The pillow wall had completely disappeared, scattered across the floor like casualties of war. And that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was the very obvious, very physical evidence of his body's reaction to their position, pressing insistently against her lower back. Madison's brain short-circuited. Her heart slammed against her ribs so hard she was certain he could feel it. Every nerve ending in her body suddenly caught fire. She was acutely, devastatingly aware of every point where their bodies touched. His chest against her back, his breath warm against her neck, his hand splayed possessively across her stomach. She should move. She should definitely move. Say something. Cough. Fake a seizure. But she didn't. Because a traitorous part of her, a part she'd been ignoring for years, wanted to stay exactly where she was, wanted to sink deeper into his embrace, wanted to turn around and... Christopher stirred behind her. She felt the exact moment he woke up. His body tensed, his breathing changed, and then his arm tightened around her waist, pulling her even closer. His face buried in her hair, and she heard him make a soft, sleepy sound that did absolutely criminal things to her self-control. He murmured, still mostly asleep. "You smell incredible." "Oh, God. Oh, God." Then she felt him freeze. Awareness hit him like a bucket of ice water. His entire body went rigid, and Madison knew he'd just realized their position, realized what she could feel, realized that he'd just said that out loud. He pulled away so fast he nearly fell off the bed. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice rough and panicked in a way she'd never heard before. "Madison, I'm so sorry. I wasn't..." He practically ran to the bathroom, the door closing with a decisive click. Madison lay there staring at the ceiling, her body still humming with awareness, her heart racing like she'd just run a marathon. She could still feel the phantom warmth of his arm around her, the solid strength of his chest against her back. She pressed her palms against her flushed cheeks. This was bad. This was very, very bad. Because the worst part, the absolutely worst part, was that she hadn't wanted him to let go. Tersima apartum 20 minutes later, they sat across from each other at the small kitchen table, both nursing cups of coffee and avoiding eye contact like their lives depended on it. "So," Madison said finally, desperate to break the suffocating silence. "That was a mistake," Christopher said quickly. "I'm sorry. I must have rolled over in my sleep. I didn't mean to..." "It's fine. It's not fine. You're my best friend and I made you uncomfortable. Chris, it's okay, really. It was just bodies doing body things, no big deal." Except it was a big deal. It was a huge deal, because now she couldn't stop thinking about how perfectly she'd fit against him, how right it had felt, how much she'd wanted to stay there. Christopher ran a hand through his hair, looking more rattled than she'd ever seen him. "We should rebuild the pillow wall, make it higher, add more pillows. Maybe some duct tape." Despite everything, Madison laughed. "Duct tape? I'm improvising." A small smile tugged at his lips. "This is new territory for me. Accidentally spooning your fake girlfriend? Accidentally wanting to keep holding her?" The words slipped out before he could stop them. They stared at each other, the air between them suddenly electric. Christopher stood abruptly. "I should shower. Your family will be here soon, right?" Madison nodded, not trusting her voice. As he disappeared into the bathroom, She dropped her head into her hands. This was supposed to be simple. Pretend to date her best friend, survive Christmas, go home. Easy. Except nothing felt simple anymore. Not when she could still feel the warmth of his arm around her waist. Not when her heart was doing things it absolutely should not be doing. And definitely not when she just realized that maybe she'd been lying to herself about her feelings for Christopher Rivera for a very long time. An hour later, Madison was attempting to make breakfast when she heard it. The unmistakable sound of her mother's voice in the building hallway, followed by her grandmother's cackle and her sister's excited squeal. "They're early," she hissed toward the bathroom. "Chris, they're here." He emerged in jeans and nothing else, his hair still damp, water droplets running down his very bare, very muscular chest. Madison's brain flatlined. "What do I—" he started, then froze as the apartment door burst open. "Surprise!" her mother called out. "We brought breakfast pastries and oh!" Madison's mother, grandmother, and sister stood in the doorway, bakery boxes in hand, staring at the scene before them. Madison in an oversized shirt that very obviously belonged to a man, and Christopher shirtless in the kitchen, looking like a Greek god who'd wandered in from an alternate dimension. Her sister's jaw literally dropped. Her grandmother's eyes went wide, then delighted. Her mother clutched her chest dramatically. "Oh my." "Mom," Madison squeaked. "You said you weren't coming until this afternoon." "We wanted to surprise you." Her mother's shock was rapidly transforming into barely contained glee. "And it seems we did." Christopher, to his credit, recovered faster than Madison did. He crossed the kitchen in 3 long strides, wrapped an arm around Madison's waist with easy familiarity, and smiled that devastating smile. "Mrs. Carter, I presume?" He extended his other hand. "Christopher Rivera. I've heard wonderful things about you." Madison's mother shook his hand, still staring at his chest. Yes, we've heard. Nothing about you." "That's my fault," Madison managed, her face burning. "I wanted to surprise you." "Well, you certainly did that, dear." Her grandmother pushed past, setting down the pastries and giving Christopher an appraising look that made Madison want to dive under the table. "Young man, do you always walk around half naked in strange apartments?" "Grandma." "What? I'm old, I can ask inappropriate questions. It's in the manual." She turned back to Christopher. "You're very attractive. Good jaw, strong shoulders. Are you planning to marry my granddaughter?" "I'm working on it," Christopher said smoothly, and Madison nearly choked on air. Her sister finally found her voice. "Madison, you have a boyfriend? Since when?" 6 months, Christopher answered before Madison could. "Best 6 months of my life." He looked down at Madison with such warmth, such apparent adoration, that for a second she almost forgot it was all pretend. "I need to put on a shirt," he said, pressing a kiss to Madison's temple that made her entire nervous system malfunction. "I'll be right back." As soon as he disappeared into the bedroom, Madison's family descended like a tornado. "He's gorgeous," her sister whispered urgently. "Why didn't you tell us?" her mother demanded, though she looked more thrilled than angry. "Is he good in bed?" her grandmother asked loudly. "Grandma!" "What? That's important information." Madison pressed her hands to her face, which felt like it was approximately the temperature of the sun. "Can we please have coffee before the interrogation?" "Absolutely not," her mother said, pulling out a chair and sitting down with the determination of a detective. "Start talking, now. How did you meet? Why didn't you tell us? What does he do? Is he serious about you?" Christopher reappeared, thankfully now wearing a shirt, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. He handed one to Madison with a private smile that made her grandmother emit a sound that could only be described as a gleeful squeak. "I can answer some of those," he said, settling into the chair next to Madison and casually taking her hand. His thumb traced circles on her palm, and Madison had to focus very hard on breathing normally. "Madison and I have been friends for 5 years. We met at a charity event where we both hated the small talk and ended up hiding on the balcony together." "That sounds like Maddie," her sister said, smiling. 6 months ago, I finally worked up the courage to tell her I wanted to be more than friends." He looked at Madison, and there was something in his eyes she couldn't quite read. "Best decision I've ever made." Madison's heart did a somersault. "And what do you do, Christopher?" her mother asked, leaning forward. "I run a tech company. Nothing too exciting." "He's the CEO of Rivera Technologies," Madison added. Forbes 30 under 30. Well, 35 now, but still. Her sister's eyes widened. Wait, the Christopher Rivera? The one who created that revolutionary data security system? Christopher shrugged modestly. Guilty. Madison's mother looked like she might faint from joy. Her grandmother was openly cackling with delight, and her sister looked somewhere between impressed and annoyed that Madison had apparently won at the boyfriend competition. Well, her mother said, composing herself, this is certainly wonderful. Unexpected, but wonderful. We are so happy for you, sweetheart. She pulled Madison into a tight hug and whispered in her ear, he looks at you like you hung the moon. Don't let this one go. Madison's throat tightened. If only her mother knew the truth, that it was all an act, a performance, a carefully constructed lie. Even if, for a moment there in his arms, it had felt devastatingly real. Christopher's POV. This was a terrible idea. Christopher had closed billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat. He'd given presentations to hostile board members. He'd negotiated with some of the most ruthless business people in the world. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for the feeling of waking up with Madison Carter in his arms. He stood in the shower, letting cold water pour over him, trying to regain some semblance of control. His body had betrayed him spectacularly that morning, and worse, his mouth had too. You smell incredible. What the hell had he been thinking? He hadn't been thinking, that was the problem. He'd been half asleep, wrapped around the woman he'd been secretly in love with for 3 years, and his stupid, sleep-addled brain had just said it out loud. The worst part? It was true. She did smell incredible, like vanilla and something floral he could never quite identify, but that made him want to bury his face in her hair and never leave. Christopher turned off the water and stared at himself in the mirror. Get it together, Rivera, you're pretending. That's all this is. Pretending. Except it didn't feel like pretending when he'd held her. It had felt like coming home. A Madison's POV. So, Christopher, Madison's grandmother said, settling into the couch like she was preparing for a long interrogation session. Tell me, what are your intentions toward my granddaughter? They'd moved to the living room after breakfast, and Madison was perched on the armchair while Christopher sat on the couch, looking far too comfortable for someone who should be terrified. My intentions are completely honorable, Mrs. Peterson, he said with that charming smile that probably closed deals and broke hearts in equal measure. That's boring. I want details. When are you proposing? How many children do you want? Are you good with your hands? Grandma. Madison buried her face in her hands. What? I'm 82. I've earned the right to be inappropriate. Christopher laughed, that real laugh that Madison loved. I appreciate your directness. To answer your questions, when the time is right, I'm thinking 2 or 3, and I've been told I'm quite skilled with my hands. Madison choked on her coffee. Her sister, Layla, leaned forward. Okay, but I have to know, how did you actually get together? Like, what made you finally tell her you had feelings? Christopher glanced at Madison, and she saw something flicker in his eyes. It was her birthday. She'd had a terrible day. Deadline stress. An argument with her editor. I showed up at her apartment with her favorite Thai food and those terrible romantic comedies she pretends not to love. That had actually happened 6 months ago. Madison remembered it vividly. We were on her couch, he continued, his voice softer now, and she laughed at something in the movie, and I just looked at her, really looked at her, and I realized I was tired of pretending I didn't want this, didn't want her, every single day. The room had gone quiet. Even Madison's grandmother wasn't making jokes. So I told her, Christopher said, his blue eyes locked on Madison's. I said, I'm in love with you. I have been for a while. And I know this might ruin everything, but I can't keep pretending I'm not. Madison's heart was hammering. That hadn't happened. None of that had happened. So why did it sound so real? Why did she wish it had? And what did you say? Her mother asked Madison gently. Madison swallowed hard. I told him I'd been waiting for him to figure it out for 2 years. Christopher's expression shifted. Surprise? Confusion? Something she couldn't quite name. Because that part was true. She had been waiting. She just hadn't admitted it to herself until right now. Later that afternoon, Madison's cousin Andrew arrived. He was 29, worked as a data analyst, and had an unfortunate habit of treating real life like one of his case files. "So Christopher Rivera," Andrew said, shaking Christopher's hand with a grip that was slightly too firm. "Madison's told us absolutely nothing about you, which I find fascinating. Usually she overshares about everything." "Andrew, be nice," Madison warned. "I am being nice, I'm just curious." He pulled out his phone. "Quick compatibility test. Madison, what side of the bed does Christopher sleep on?" "Left," Madison answered immediately. "Christopher, what's Madison's coffee order?" "2 sugars, extra cream, shot of vanilla," Christopher said without hesitation. Andrew frowned, clearly hoping to catch them in a lie. "Madison, what's Christopher's middle name?" Madison opened her mouth, then closed it. She actually didn't know his middle name. "Alexander," Christopher supplied. "She knows it. She just likes to make me sweat." Andrew wasn't convinced. "Christopher, what's Madison's biggest fear?" "Being forgotten," Christopher said quietly. "Not death, not failure. She's afraid that she'll leave this world without having made any real impact, that her stories won't matter, that she won't matter." The room went silent. Madison stared at him, her throat tight. He was right. He was absolutely right. She'd never told him that directly, but somehow he knew. "Also spiders," Christopher added with a small smile. "She's terrified of spiders." The tension broke. Everyone laughed, including Madison, though her eyes were suspiciously bright. Andrew looked grudgingly impressed. "Okay, you pass, for now." "There will be more tests?" Christopher asked, amused. "Oh, absolutely. I have a whole list." "This is just the warm-up round." And that evening, after her family finally left, "We'll be back tomorrow for lunch," her mother had promised, threatened. Madison collapsed onto the couch. "Your family is exhausting," Christopher said, sitting next to her. "I warned you." "You really did." He turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. "What you said earlier, about waiting for me to figure it out." Madison's heart skipped. "I was improvising, playing the part." "Were you?" The question hung between them, heavy with implications. "Chris," "Because I wasn't." He shifted closer, and Madison's breath caught. "When I said I couldn't stop thinking about you, that I was tired of pretending, I wasn't acting, Madison." "Don't," she whispered. "Don't say things like that if you don't mean them." "What if I do mean them?" He reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her cheek, and Madison felt like she was burning from the inside out. "We're supposed to be pretending," she said, but her voice was shaky. "I know." His thumb traced her jawline, and she shivered. "But right now, there's no one watching. No one to fool. It's just us. That's what scares me." Christopher smiled, sad, understanding. "Me too." They sat there in the quiet apartment, the space between them charged with everything unsaid. Madison wanted to lean in, wanted to close the distance, wanted to know what his lips would feel like against hers. But if they crossed that line, there would be no going back. And she wasn't sure she was brave enough to risk losing her best friend for something that might just be temporary insanity brought on by proximity and fake dating. "We should probably rebuild the pillow wall," she said finally. "Probably a good idea." Neither of them moved. "Madison?" "Yeah?" "For what it's worth, I don't regret waking up with you in my arms this morning. I just regret that it surprised you, that it made you uncomfortable." "It didn't make me uncomfortable," she admitted quietly. "That's what scared me." His blue eyes darkened. "Then we're both in trouble. Serious trouble." Christopher stood, extending his hand to help her up. When she took it, he pulled her close, not into an embrace, just close enough that she could feel his warmth, could see the conflict in his eyes that probably mirrored her own. "Tomorrow's going to be harder," he said. "More family, more questions, more pretending. Can you handle it?" He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "The pretending isn't the hard part anymore, Madison. The hard part is remembering that this has an expiration date." He disappeared into the bedroom, leaving Madison standing in the living room, her hand still warm from his touch. Her heart tangled in knots she had no idea how to unravel. This was only day 2. They had 12 more days of this. Madison had a terrible feeling that by the end of 2 weeks, her heart wasn't going to be the only thing she'd lost to this charade. Madison woke up the next morning to find herself once again wrapped around Christopher like a koala on a tree. This was becoming a very dangerous pattern. His arm was around her waist, her head tucked under his chin, their legs impossibly tangled. The pillow wall they'd carefully reconstructed last night had apparently declared defeat and vanished somewhere during the night. But this time Christopher was already awake. She could tell by his breathing, too controlled, too deliberate. He was lying perfectly still, probably terrified of waking her up, possibly having an internal crisis about their current position. Madison kept her eyes closed, torn between pretending to still be asleep and acknowledging the elephant, or rather, the full-body contact situation in the room. "I know you're awake," Christopher said quietly, his voice rumbling through his chest and into her ear. "How? Your breathing changed. That's creepy. That's observant." She felt him smile against her hair. "We should probably talk about this. About how your bed has a magnetic force that pulls us together. About how neither of us seems to mind it very much." Madison's heart stuttered. She pulled back just enough to look up at him and immediately regretted it. His hair was messy from sleep, his blue eyes were soft in the morning light, and he was looking at her with an expression that made her chest ache. "Chris!" Her phone exploded with sound. Both of them jumped as Madison's alarm shrieked, followed immediately by 3 text messages that pinged in rapid succession. Madison grabbed her phone, grateful for the interruption, even as she mourned it. "Mom, lunch at noon. Don't be late. Derek is coming." "Grandma, wear something pretty. First impressions matter, even though you already made a very good impression yesterday with that shirtless situation." "Layla, can't wait for you to meet Derek. He's so excited to meet your Christopher." "Derek's coming," Madison said, showing Christopher the messages. "Your sister's fiancé?" "The perfect one. Doctor. Volunteers at free clinics. Probably rescues puppies in his spare time." Christopher sat up, running a hand through his already messy hair. "Sounds intimidating. You're a tech CEO who was on the cover of Forbes. I think you can handle a doctor. It's not a competition. Everything is a competition in my family. You'll learn." 3 hours later, Madison stood in front of the bathroom mirror, trying on her 5th outfit. Nothing looked right. Everything was either too casual or trying too hard. "You look beautiful," Christopher said from the doorway. She jumped. "How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough to watch you reject 4 perfectly good outfits." He walked in, and the bathroom suddenly felt very small. "What's wrong with this one?" "It's too, I don't know, plain?" "You're nervous." "I'm not nervous." "Madison." He turned her to face him, hands on her shoulders. "You're my fake girlfriend, remember? I'm supposed to think you're the most beautiful woman in the world. Which, for the record, isn't hard to pretend." Her breath caught. "Christopher, let me finish." His hands slid down her arms, leaving goosebumps in their wake. "You're going to walk into that lunch, and your sister's perfect fiancé is going to be there, and you're going to feel like you're being compared. But here's the thing. I'm not comparing you to anyone. To me, there is no comparison." "You're really good at this fake boyfriend thing," she whispered. "What if I'm not pretending?" Before she could respond, her phone rang. Her mother. Of course. "We're on our way," Madison said, answering it. "Yes, we're both dressed." "No, I don't need you to. Mom, we're adults. Okay, fine. Yes, we're leaving now." She hung up and looked at Christopher. "We should go. We should talk about what I just said. We should definitely not do that right now." She grabbed her purse, her heart racing. "Come on. Time to meet Dr. Perfect." The restaurant her mother had chosen was, of course, the fanciest one in town. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, the kind of place where the menu didn't have prices because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. Madison's family was already there, seated at a large table, and next to Layla sat a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a medical drama. Handsome, clean-cut, wearing a smile that was probably meant to be charming but came across as slightly plastic. "Madison, Christopher." Her mother waved them over enthusiastically. "Come meet Derek." Derek stood, extending his hand to Christopher first. "You must be the famous Christopher Rivera. I've read about your company. Very impressive." "Thanks," Christopher said, shaking his hand. "And you're the surgeon, right?" "Cardiothoracic. I specialize in pediatric cases." Derek turned to Madison, his smile widening. "And you must be the talented writer. Layla talks about you all the time." "Does she?" Madison glanced at her sister, who was beaming. They settled into their seats, Christopher's hand immediately finding Madison's under the table, his thumb tracing soothing circles on her palm. "So, Christopher," Derek said, leaning forward, "how did a tech CEO end up with a romance novelist? Seems like an unusual pairing." "Opposites attract," Christopher said smoothly. "Though we're not as opposite as you'd think. We both solve problems for a living. I just do it with code, and Madison does it with words." "How poetic," Derek said, and Madison couldn't tell if he was being sincere or condescending. Andrew, the cousin detective, seized his opportunity. "Speaking of poetry, Christopher, what's Madison's favorite book?" "Pride and Prejudice," Christopher answered without hesitation. "But she has a secret soft spot for The Princess Bride." Madison squeezed his hand under the table. He was right on both counts. "And Madison," Andrew continued, "what's Christopher's biggest pet peeve?" "People who don't listen," Madison said. "He hates when people interrupt or when they're looking at their phones while someone's talking to them. He values genuine connection." Christopher's hand tightened on hers. Derek watched this exchange with interest. "You two seem very in sync." "They do, don't they?" Layla said, smiling at her sister. "It's actually kind of adorable." Throughout lunch, Madison noticed Derek was everything he appeared to be. Polite, accomplished, well-mannered. He asked appropriate questions, laughed at appropriate times, and treated Layla with appropriate affection. He was perfect, and absolutely, completely boring. Madison looked at Christopher, who was currently telling her grandmother some ridiculous story about a failed business pitch that involved a broken projector and a very confused janitor. Her grandmother was cackling with laughter, and even her mother was smiling. Christopher caught her looking and winked. Her stomach flipped. This was the difference, she realized. Derek was performing perfection. Christopher was just Christopher. Real, warm, funny. He made her grandmother laugh. He held Madison's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. He looked at her like she was the only person in the room, and none of it was real. The thought hit her like cold water. This was all an act, a performance. In 2 weeks they'd go back to being just friends. And all of this, the hand-holding, the intimate looks, the sleeping wrapped around each other, would stop. The realization made her chest ache. "Madison, you okay?" Christopher asked quietly, concern in his eyes. "Fine," she lied. "Just tired." He studied her face for a moment, then excused them both. "Madison needs some air. We'll be right back." He led her out to the restaurant's garden patio, empty in the December cold. "What's wrong?" he asked, turning her to face him. "Nothing. Everything. I don't know." She wrapped her arms around herself. "Derek's perfect for my sister. But there's no spark, no life. It's like watching two actors who learned their lines but forgot to feel anything." Christopher stepped closer, his hands coming up to cup her face. "And what do we look like?" "Like something real," she whispered. "Which is the problem, because it's not." "Madison, we should go back inside," she said, pulling away before she did something stupid like kiss him. "They'll wonder where we went." Christopher caught her hand, pulling her back. "One of these days, you're going to let me finish a sentence. One of these days, you're going to say something I'm ready to hear." They stared at each other, the air between them electric. "Maybe that day is coming sooner than you think," he said quietly. Before Madison could respond, the patio door opened and Andrew stuck his head out. "Everything okay out here? Grandma's worried you two snuck off to make out." "Tell Grandma she'll have to keep wondering," Christopher said. But he was smiling as he took Madison's hand and led her back inside. As they returned to the table, Madison realized something terrifying. She was falling in love with her fake boyfriend, and she had no idea what to do about it. Christopher's POV. Christopher was losing his mind. It was day 4 of this charade, and he was absolutely, completely losing his mind. He stood in the shower, cold again, trying to get his body under control. Every morning, he woke up with Madison in his arms. Every morning it got harder to let go. Every morning he had to remind himself that this was temporary, that she was only doing this to appease her family, that none of it was real. Except, it felt real. God, it felt so real. The way she fit against him. The little sighs she made in her sleep, the way her hand would find his chest and rest there, right over his heart, like she was checking to make sure it was still beating. It was. Barely. Because she was killing him. He turned off the water and stared at his reflection. "You're in love with your best friend. You've been in love with her for 3 years. You agreed to this insane plan because you're an idiot who can't say no to her, and now you're in hell. A very specific kind of hell where he got to hold her, touch her, pretend to be hers, but couldn't actually have her. Christopher, you okay in there? Madison's voice came through the door. You've been in there for 20 minutes. Fine. Just thinking. About what? You. Always you. Everything is about you. Work stuff, he lied. Firecomedy series out of Madison's POV. That afternoon, Madison's mother declared it was time for family game day, which in the Carter family meant chaos disguised as bonding. We're playing charades, then Pictionary, then Truth or Dare, her mother announced, setting up the living room like a game show set. Truth or Dare, Madison repeated. Mom, we're not 12. It's tradition. Remember, we played at Layla's graduation party. Madison did remember. It had ended with her cousin trying to do a handstand and breaking a lamp. This will be fun, her grandmother said, settling into the best chair with a glass of wine that was definitely too large. I want to see Christopher's competitive side. Christopher, sitting next to Madison on the couch, leaned over and whispered, Should I be worried? Terrified, she whispered back. My family takes games very seriously. Define seriously. My dad once didn't speak to his brother for a month over a disputed Scrabble word. Your dad's not here, right? Business trip. You're safe, for now. The first game, charades, was predictably chaotic. Derek acted out heart surgery with the intensity of someone actually performing the operation. Layla guessed every movie wrong and blamed it on Derek's unclear hand gestures. Andrew treated it like a criminal investigation, taking notes. When it was Christopher's turn, he got romance novel. Madison watched in amazement as her usually stoic, controlled best friend transformed. He clutched his chest dramatically, gazed into the distance with exaggerated longing, pretended to write passionately in the air, then swept an invisible person into his arms for a theatrical kiss. Everyone was laughing. Even Derek cracked a genuine smile. Romance novel, Madison shouted. Christopher pointed at her triumphantly. See? We're connected. That's because you were basically mocking my entire career, she said, but she was smiling. I would never mock your career. I was honoring it, with enthusiasm. During Pictionary, things got competitive. Christopher turned out to be a terrible artist, but an excellent guesser, especially when Madison was drawing. She'd barely sketched 2 lines before he was shouting answers. How did you get coffee shop from 2 lines? Layla demanded. I know how she thinks, Christopher said simply, and Madison's heart did that annoying flutter thing again. Then came Truth or Dare. This is going to be a disaster, Madison muttered. Probably, Christopher agreed, but at least it'll be entertaining. Her grandmother went first, spinning the bottle. It landed on Derek. Truth or Dare, young man? Truth, Derek said confidently. Boring, Andrew yelled. What's the most romantic thing you've ever done for Layla? Her grandmother asked. Derek thought for a moment. I arranged for her birthday dinner at her favorite restaurant, reserved the private room, had them prepare her favorite meal, brought flowers. It sounded nice, planned, appropriate. Christopher, her grandmother continued, what's the most romantic thing you've done for Madison? Christopher didn't hesitate. Last month she was having a terrible writing day. Nothing was working, and she was ready to throw her laptop out the window. I knew she needed to clear her head, so I showed up at her apartment at midnight with a blanket, 2 thermoses of hot chocolate, and drove her to that spot outside the city where you can see the stars. Madison's breath caught. That had actually happened. She'd been stuck on a chapter, frustrated and exhausted, and he'd just appeared. They'd laid on that blanket, stared at the stars, and talked about everything and nothing. We stayed until sunrise, Christopher continued, his eyes on Madison, and by the time we got back she knew exactly how to fix her chapter. She wrote it in 4 hours straight and said it was the best thing she'd ever written. The room had gone quiet. That's... Her mother's voice was thick with emotion. That's beautiful. That's not fair, Layla said, but she was smiling. How are we supposed to compete with that? The bottle spun again. This time it landed on Christopher. Truth or dare? Andrew asked, leaning forward with interest. Dare. Christopher met his gaze evenly. I'm not afraid. Andrew grinned wickedly. I dare you to tell us the exact moment you knew you were in love with Madison. Madison's heart stopped. "Andrew, that's not a dare, that's a truth question," her mother protested. "Fine. I dare him to tell the truth about when he fell in love with her." Christopher was quiet for a moment. Madison could feel everyone watching them, waiting. Her palms were sweating. 3 years ago, Christopher said finally, his voice quiet but clear. "She was at my apartment. We were watching some disaster of a movie she'd chosen. Terrible plot, worse acting. And there was this scene where the main character did something completely illogical, and Madison just lost it. Started ranting about plot holes and character motivation, using her hands to gesture, getting increasingly passionate about this ridiculous movie." He turned to look at her, and Madison felt pinned by his gaze. "And I realized I could listen to her talk about anything for the rest of my life, could watch her get excited about stories forever, that everything was better when she was in the room, that I was better when she was in the room." He paused. "I didn't tell her because I was afraid of ruining what we had. Took me 3 years to work up the courage." Madison couldn't breathe, couldn't think, because that movie night had happened. That conversation had happened. She remembered it clearly. It had been some terrible sci-fi film, and she'd gotten way too invested in criticizing the plot. Had he really been in love with her that long? Or was he just an impossibly good actor? Her mother was actually crying. "That's the most romantic thing I've ever heard." Layla was looking at Derek with an expression Madison couldn't quite read. "My turn," her grandmother announced, spinning the bottle. It landed on Madison. "Truth or dare, sweetheart?" "Truth," Madison said, her voice shaky. "When did you know you loved him?" Madison looked at Christopher, at those blue eyes that saw through her, at the face she knew better than her own, at the man who'd been her best friend for 5 years and who she'd been slowly, terrifyingly falling in love with without even realizing it. "I think I always knew," she said softly. "I just wasn't ready to admit it. Because loving him felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, thrilling and terrifying at the same time. Once you jump, there's no going back." "And you jumped?" her grandmother pressed. "I jumped." Madison's eyes never left Christopher's. "I'm still jumping." The air between them was electric. Christopher's hand found hers, threading their fingers together, and Madison felt like her heart might actually burst out of her chest. "Okay, this is getting too emotional for me," Andrew announced. "Who wants pizza? I'm buying." The spell broke. Everyone started talking about pizza toppings, and someone turned on music, and the moment passed. But later, when they were finally alone in their apartment, Christopher stopped Madison in the hallway. "How much of that was true?" he asked quietly. "How much of yours was true?" She countered. "All of it." Madison's heart stuttered. "Chris, I know, wrong time, wrong circumstances. We're supposed to be pretending." He stepped closer and she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "But Madison, I need you to know. Everything I've said to your family, every word about how I feel about you, I wasn't acting. We can't do this," she whispered, even as her body swayed toward him. "I know. We'll ruin everything. I know. We should go to bed. Separate sides. Rebuild the wall. We should." Neither of them moved. Finally, Christopher stepped back, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "You're right. We should maintain boundaries, keep this professional." "Professional fake dating," Madison said, and almost laughed at how absurd it sounded. "Exactly." They built the pillow wall in silence, stacking it higher than ever. That night, Madison lay awake for hours, staring at those stupid pillows, acutely aware of Christopher on the other side, and wondered how much longer they could keep pretending that their hearts weren't already completely entangled. Morning came too early. Madison woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the distinct lack of warmth beside her. She rolled over to find Christopher's side of the bed empty, the pillow wall completely demolished once again, pillows scattered everywhere like evidence of a very civilized battle. She could hear movement in the kitchen. The smell of coffee drifted through the apartment. Madison pulled on a light sundress, it was surprisingly warm for December, and padded barefoot into the kitchen. Christopher stood at the stove, making what appeared to be pancakes, wearing grey sweatpants and nothing else. His back was to her, and Madison took a moment to appreciate the view, the broad shoulders, the defined muscles, the way his body moved with casual grace. She was so distracted that she didn't notice him turn around until he spoke. "Morning," he said, and his voice was rough, like he hadn't quite woken up yet. His hair was messy, his jaw shadowed with stubble, and his blue eyes locked onto her with an intensity that made her stomach flip. "Morning," she managed. "You're making pancakes? Your mom mentioned you love them." He turned back to the stove, flipping one expertly. "Figured I'd practice my domestic boyfriend skills." Madison moved to pour herself coffee, acutely aware of how small the kitchen suddenly felt. Christopher was right there, close enough to touch, the warmth from his body radiating across the small space. She reached for the sugar at the same moment he turned to grab a plate. They collided, not hard, but enough that she stumbled slightly. His hands shot out to steady her, gripping her waist, and suddenly they were pressed together, her hands flat against his bare chest. Madison's brain short-circuited. She could feel his heart beating under her palms, fast and strong, could feel the heat of his skin, could smell whatever body wash he used mixed with something uniquely him. "Sorry," she whispered, but she didn't move. Neither did he. Christopher's hands were still on her waist, his fingers spreading wide, thumbs brushing the bare skin where her dress had ridden up slightly. His eyes dropped to her lips, then back up, and Madison saw something dangerous flash across his face. "Your perfume," he said, his voice dropping an octave. "I need to know what perfume you're wearing." Before she could answer, before she could even breathe, he moved. One moment she was standing, the next she was sitting on the counter, Christopher between her legs, his body pressed against hers. His hands slid from her waist to her hair, fingers threading through the loose waves. "Chris, what are you—" she started, but her voice died as he leaned in. He didn't kiss her. Instead, he buried his face in her neck, breathing her in, and Madison felt like every nerve ending in her body had caught fire. "This perfume," he murmured against her skin, his lips barely brushing her pulse point. "It's been driving me insane for days." "It's just," she gasped as he pressed an open-mouthed kiss to her neck. "It's just vanilla. Nothing special." "Liar." Another kiss, this one higher, along her jaw. "Everything about you is special." His hands were still in her hair, tilting her head to give him better access. Madison's hands gripped his shoulders, torn between pushing him away and pulling him closer. Her body was screaming for the latter. He kissed a path up her neck, along her jawline, to that sensitive spot just below her ear. Madison shivered, a small sound escaping her throat that she'd be embarrassed about later. "Chris," she breathed. "Someone could walk in." "Don't care," he muttered against her skin, though she felt him smile. "The pancakes are burning." That got his attention. Christopher pulled back, and Madison immediately mourned the loss of contact. He turned off the stove, dealing with the slightly overdone pancakes, while Madison tried to remember how to breathe normally. Her entire body was trembling. Her skin felt too hot. And she was acutely aware that if he'd asked, if he'd moved just a few inches and actually kissed her mouth, she would have let him. Hell, she would have helped. Christopher turned back to her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. He looked wrecked, conflicted, like he was fighting a war with himself. "I shouldn't have done that," he said. "Probably not. There's no one here to fool, no audience." "I know. So why did I do it?" Madison slid off the counter, her legs unsteady. "I don't know, Chris, you tell me." He stared at her, jaw tight. "Because I've been thinking about kissing your neck since the first morning we woke up tangled together, because the smell of your perfume makes me lose my mind, because every time I look at you, I forget this is supposed to be fake." Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "We can't do this." "I know. We're friends, best friends. I know that too. If we cross this line—" "Madison." He stepped closer, and she backed up until she hit the counter. "We crossed that line days ago. We're just both too scared to admit it." "What happens when this is over?" she whispered. "When Christmas ends and we go back to real life?" "I don't know." His hand came up to cup her cheek, thumb brushing over her cheekbone. "But I know I don't want to go back to pretending you're just my friend, because you haven't been just my friend for a very long time." Madison opened her mouth to respond, but her phone buzzed insistently on the counter. She grabbed it, grateful for the interruption and hating it at the same time. "Mom, family outing today. Ice skating. Be ready in an hour." "Ice skating," Madison said, her voice not quite steady. "Your favorite." Christopher groaned. "I can't ice skate." "What?" Mr. Perfect at everything can't ice skate? I grew up in San Diego. We had beaches, not ice rinks. He ran a hand through his hair. This is going to be embarrassing. Despite everything, the tension, the confusion, the want, Madison laughed. Oh, this I have to see. An hour later, they stood at the entrance to the outdoor ice rink in the town square. Christmas lights were strung overhead, holiday music played through speakers, and families glided across the ice with varying degrees of grace. Christopher looked at the ice like it was a personal enemy. "It's not that hard," Madison said, lacing up her skates. "You just glide. I'm going to fall and break something important. Your pride." "I was thinking my spine, but sure, that too." Madison stood, wobbling slightly on her skates. Christopher followed suit, immediately gripping the wall like his life depended on it. "Come on." She held out her hand. "I'll help you." "This is humiliating. This is adorable." She tugged him onto the ice. "Just hold on to me." Christopher did, both hands gripping her waist as she slowly skated backward, pulling him along. His legs were stiff, his movements jerky, and he looked absolutely terrified. "Relax," Madison said, trying not to laugh. "You're too tense. I'm about to die on frozen water. I have a right to be tense." "You're not going to die." "You don't know that." A child, maybe 7 years old, zoomed past them effortlessly, doing a little spin. Christopher glared after the child. "That's just showing off." Madison couldn't help it. She burst out laughing, and Christopher's expression softened. "You're enjoying this," he accused, "immensely." She spun around so she was skating forward, now holding both his hands. "Come on. Just push off gently. I've got you." They made slow progress around the rink, Christopher gradually getting more confident. He only almost fell twice, catching himself both times by gripping Madison tighter. "See?" she said. "You're getting it. I'm getting frostbite." "That's what I'm getting." Across the rink, Madison spotted her family. Her mother waved enthusiastically. Derek and Layla were skating in perfect synchronized movements, like they'd choreographed it. Andrew was attempting to skate backward and failing spectacularly. "They're watching us," Christopher muttered. "Then we should give them a show." Madison let go of one of his hands and moved to his side, threading her arm through his. "Just follow my lead." They skated together, slowly finding a rhythm. And somewhere along the way, Christopher stopped looking at his feet and started looking at her. "You're smiling," she said. "Against my better judgment, I'm having fun." "Because you're spending time on frozen water with me." "Because I'm spending time with you." He pulled her closer. "The frozen water is just a terrifying bonus." They made it around the rink twice before Christopher's skate caught on something. He stumbled, arms windmilling, and Madison tried to catch him but instead got pulled down. They landed in a heap on the ice, Christopher on his back with Madison sprawled across his chest. For a moment, they just lay there, stunned. Then Madison felt Christopher's chest shaking and realized he was laughing, really laughing, the kind of uninhibited joy she rarely saw from him. She started laughing too, and soon they were both lying on the ice, laughing so hard they couldn't breathe, completely oblivious to the other skaters going around them or her family skating over with concern. "Are you two okay?" her mother asked. "Perfect," Christopher managed, still grinning. "Just working on our synchronized falling routine." Madison looked down at him, at his bright eyes and genuine smile, at the way he was looking at her like she was the only person in the world. And she realized with startling clarity she was completely, utterly, irreversibly in love with him. Not falling, already fallen. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like coming home. Christopher's POV. That night Christopher couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, hyper-aware of Madison breathing softly beside him. The pillow wall was there. They'd rebuilt it with grim determination after the ice skating incident, but it felt more symbolic than functional at this point. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from his best friend, Matthew. "Matthew, how's the fake dating going? Have you kissed her yet?" "Christopher, it's complicated." "Matthew, that's code for I'm in way over my head. I told you this would happen." "Matthew, you've been in love with her for 3 years, man. Did you really think you could pretend to date her without it becoming real?" "Christopher, it was real before it started. That's the problem." "Matthew, so tell her." "Christopher, and ruin our friendship when she doesn't feel the same way." Matthew. Bold of you to assume she doesn't feel the same way. From an outside perspective, you're both idiots. Christopher smiled despite himself, but put down his phone without responding. Matthew didn't understand. He couldn't understand what it was like to have the most important person in your life finally in your arms, knowing it was temporary, knowing that in a week all of this would end. He turned his head to look at the pillow wall, beyond which Madison slept, or at least he thought she slept. "Chris." Her voice was quiet in the darkness. "Are you awake?" "Yeah. Can't sleep. Too much on my mind." Silence for a moment, then, "Me too. Want to talk about it?" "Not really." "Yes. I don't know." He heard her shift position. "Do you ever wish we could just pause time? Stay in a moment forever?" "Which moment?" "I don't know. Maybe this morning, or today at the ice rink when you looked so happy." She paused. "Before everything gets complicated." "Madison, it's already complicated." "I know." Another silence, heavier this time. "Can I ask you something?" Madison's voice was hesitant. "And you have to answer honestly." Christopher's heart rate picked up. "Okay. When this is over, when we go back to being just friends, will we really be able to go back, or have we already ruined everything?" The question hung in the air like a grenade. "I don't know," Christopher admitted. "But I know I'd rather have you in my life as a friend than not have you at all. Even if it hurts. Even if it kills me." He heard her breath hitch. Then, quietly, "Good night, Christopher. Good night, Madison." Neither of them slept much that night. Backs Madison's POV. The next morning, Madison's mother announced that the entire family was going Christmas shopping in the city. "It's tradition," she declared over breakfast. "We go every year. It'll be wonderful." Madison and Christopher exchanged glances. Wonderful wasn't the word she'd use. Exhausting, maybe. Chaotic, definitely. The shopping trip was exactly as Madison predicted. Her mother insisted on visiting every store. Her grandmother made inappropriate comments about lingerie, and Andrew kept trying to lose Derek in the crowds. "I don't dislike him," Andrew explained when Madison caught him. "I just think he's boring, and I'm testing his tracking skills. He's a surgeon, not a detective. Everyone should have basic tracking skills. What if there's an apocalypse?" Madison decided not to engage with that logic. She and Christopher ended up separated from the main group, wandering through a bookstore. Christopher watched with amusement as Madison reverently touched various book spines, her face lighting up at certain titles. "You're like a kid in a candy store," he observed. "Books are better than candy." "Debatable." She pulled out a vintage edition of Persuasion. "Look at this. It's beautiful." Christopher plucked it from her hands and took it to the register before she could protest. "Chris, no, that's expensive. It's a gift." He paid before she could stop him. "Consider it an early Christmas present." "You didn't have to." "I wanted to." He handed her the bag, and their fingers brushed. The contact sent electricity up her arm. "You should have things that make you happy." They stood there in the middle of the bookstore, the air thick with everything unsaid. "You make me happy," Madison said, before she could stop herself. Christopher's expression shifted. Surprise, hope, something deeper. "Madison, there you are." Layla appeared, slightly out of breath. "We've been looking everywhere. Grandma wants to get lunch." The moment shattered. Christopher stepped back, and Madison clutched her book like a lifeline. Over lunch at a crowded cafe, Madison noticed something was off with her sister. Layla kept checking her phone, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Derek was his usual pleasant self, but there was a distance between them that hadn't been there before. When Derek excused himself to take a call, Madison leaned toward her sister. "You okay?" "Fine," Layla said automatically. "Layla," her sister sighed. "It's nothing, just Derek wants to move the wedding up, like really up, spring instead of next fall." "That's soon." "Yeah." Layla stirred her coffee absently. "And I know I should be excited, but I just feel rushed. Like we're checking boxes on a list. Get engaged, check. Pick a date, check. Find a venue, check. But where's I don't know, the magic?" Madison didn't know what to say. She glanced at Christopher, who was listening quietly. "You want to know something?" Layla continued. "Yesterday at the ice rink, I watched you two fall on the ice and laugh like it was the funniest thing in the world. And I thought, when was the last time Derek and I laughed like that? When was the last time we did something spontaneous and ridiculous just because we wanted to? Layla, I'm not saying I don't love Derek. I do. He's perfect on paper. But you and Christopher, she shook her head, you two look at each other like you're in on some secret the rest of us don't know. Like you're best friends and lovers and partners all at once. That's what I want. That's what I thought I had, but now I'm not sure. Madison's chest tightened. If only Layla knew the truth, that it was all fake, that she and Christopher were just pretending, that in a week all of this would end. Except it didn't feel fake anymore. It hadn't felt fake for days. Derek returned and the conversation shifted, but Madison couldn't shake her sister's words. That night, back at the apartment, Madison sat on the couch while Christopher made tea in the kitchen. Your sister seems troubled, he said, bringing her a mug. She's questioning her engagement. Because of us? Because she realized she wants what we have, what we're pretending to have. Madison laughed bitterly. Ironic, isn't it? We're faking a relationship so well that we're making her doubt her real one. Christopher set down his mug and turned to face her fully. Madison, when are we going to stop pretending? What? When are we going to stop calling this fake? He moved closer. Because I'm not pretending anymore. I haven't been for days. Maybe I never was. Madison's heart was racing. Chris, I meant everything I said in that game. About falling in love with you 3 years ago. About you being the best thing in my life. About not wanting to lose you. He cupped her face in his hands. The only thing I'm pretending is that I'm okay with this ending. We're going to ruin our friendship, she whispered. We already did. The second I agreed to this plan, the second I put my arm around you and called you mine, the second I woke up with you in my arms and didn't want to let go, we already changed everything. I'm scared. So am I. His thumb brushed her cheek. But I'm more scared of going back to pretending I don't want this. Don't want you. Madison closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. What if it doesn't work? What if we try and it falls apart? What if it doesn't? What if this is exactly what we've both been too afraid to reach for? She opened her eyes to find him watching her with such intensity it stole her breath. I'm in love with you, she said, the words tumbling out. I think I have been for a long time, but I was too scared to admit it. And this week, being with you like this, sleeping next to you, holding your hand, pretending to be yours, it's been the best and worst week of my life, because I want it to be real so badly it hurts. Christopher's expression transformed, relief, joy, something that looked almost like pain. It is real. It's been real from the beginning. He leaned in, and Madison's breath caught. This was it. He was going to kiss her, and everything would change, and there would be no going back. His lips were inches from hers when someone knocked on the door. They sprang apart like teenagers caught by their parents. Madison? Christopher? It was her mother's voice. Are you still awake? I brought you some leftover pie. Christopher dropped his head back with a groan. Your family has the worst timing. Despite everything, Madison laughed. Welcome to the Carter family. She opened the door, and her mother bustled in with enough pie to feed an army. But as her mother chattered about the day, and Christopher made appropriate responses, Madison caught his eye across the room. Soon, his expression said. Soon we'll finish this conversation. Soon, she agreed silently. Soon we'll stop pretending. And soon couldn't come fast enough. Madison woke up the next morning to an empty bed and the sound of her phone buzzing insistently. 7 missed calls from her mother. 12 texts in the family group chat. 3 voicemails from her grandmother. Her stomach sank. Something was wrong. She grabbed her phone and scrolled through the messages, her heart rate increasing with each one. Layla, I need to talk to everyone. Family meeting at Mom's, 10 a.m. It's important. Mom, please come, sweetheart. Your sister needs us. Grandma, if Derek hurt her, I'm going to hit him with my purse. It's heavy. I carry rocks in it for self-defense. Madison stumbled out of bed, pulling on jeans and a sweater. Where was Christopher? She found him in the kitchen, already dressed, 2 travel mugs of coffee ready. Your family's been trying to reach you, he said. Your mom called me when you didn't answer. What happened? I don't know. Your mom just said Layla needs everyone there now. He handed her a coffee and her coat. Come on, I'll drive. The drive to her mother's house was tense. Madison tried calling Layla 3 times, but it went straight to voicemail. She's probably fine, Christopher said, though he didn't sound convinced. Maybe she just wants to discuss wedding plans or something. Then why does my grandmother have rocks in her purse for Derek-related emergencies? Your grandmother always has rocks in her purse. Fair point. When they arrived, the entire family was already gathered in the living room. Her mother looked worried. Her grandmother was muttering something about men and their nonsense, and Andrew was pacing like he was working a case. Layla sat on the couch, her eyes red from crying, but she looked calm, almost relieved. "What's going on?" Madison asked, sitting next to her sister. Christopher stood behind her, his hand coming to rest on her shoulder in silent support. "I called off the engagement," Layla said quietly. The room erupted. "What?" their mother gasped. "Finally," Andrew said, then caught himself. "I mean, that's unfortunate." "Where's Derek?" their grandmother demanded. "Did he do something? Because I have rocks." "Grandma, please put away your weaponized purse," Layla said with a watery laugh. "Derek didn't do anything wrong, that's kind of the problem." Madison took her sister's hand. "What do you mean?" Layla looked at her, then at Christopher, then back. "I realized something watching you two. Watching how you look at each other, how you laugh together, how you just fit. Derek and I, we make sense on paper. We have compatible lifestyles, similar goals, matching 5-year plans, but we don't have what you have. Layla, we don't laugh like you do. We don't have inside jokes. He doesn't know that I hate the color yellow or that I still sleep with a nightlight because I'm scared of the dark. And I don't know his favorite book or what makes him really, truly happy beyond his career." Layla wiped her eyes. "We were building a partnership, not a love story, and I want a love story." Their mother was crying now. "Oh, honey, I talked to Derek last night. He agreed. We were both trying to force something that wasn't there. He's a good man, but he's not my person." She squeezed Madison's hand. "And I realized that because of you two. Because you showed me what real love looks like." Madison felt Christopher's hand tighten on her shoulder. Guilt twisted in her stomach. Their fake relationship had just destroyed her sister's real one. Except it wasn't fake anymore, was it? "Are you okay?" Madison asked. "I'm sad, but I'm also relieved." Layla smiled through her tears. "I'd rather be alone and hopeful than coupled and settling. You taught me that, Maddie. You and your books and your insistence on happily ever afters. I want my happily ever after, just not with Derek." Their grandmother stood up decisively. "Then we need wine. It's 10 in the morning, but this is a crisis. Or a celebration, I can't tell which." "Both," Layla said. "Definitely both." Several hours later, after wine and tears and too much family bonding, Madison and Christopher finally escaped back to their apartment. The moment the door closed, Madison turned to him. "My sister called off her engagement because of us." "I know. Because she wanted what we have, what we're pretending to have." "Madison, except we're not pretending anymore, are we?" She started pacing. "We said we loved each other. We almost kissed. We wake up wrapped around each other every morning. At what point does this stop being fake?" Christopher caught her arm, stopping her pacing. "It stopped being fake the moment I agreed to do this. Maybe before that. Maybe it was never fake at all. But what happens after Christmas? We go back to our real lives, and then what? Do we date? Do we try to make this work? What if we can't transition from fake to real? What if—" "Madison," he pulled her closer. "Stop overthinking this. That's like telling the ocean to stop being wet." Despite everything, he smiled. "Fair point." His hands came up to frame her face. "But right now, in this moment, I don't care about logistics or what-ifs. I only care about this. I love you. Really, truly love you. And I want to see where this goes. Even if it's scary. Especially because it's scary. The best things usually are." Madison looked up at him. At this man who knew her better than anyone. Who brought her coffee without asking. Who held her when she needed it and gave her space when she didn't. Who made her laugh and drove her crazy and somehow became the most essential person in her life without her even noticing. "I love you too," she whispered. "So much it terrifies me." "Good, we can be terrified together." He leaned down, and this time there was no interruption. No family bursting through doors, no phones ringing, no last-minute interruptions. Just Christopher, lowering his head slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She didn't want to. Their lips met softly at first, tentative, questioning. But then Christopher made a low sound in his throat, and pulled her closer, one hand sliding into her hair while the other wrapped around her waist, and the kiss deepened into something that stole her breath and made her knees weak. Madison's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, desperate to eliminate any space between them. He tasted like coffee and something uniquely him, and she never wanted this to end. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Christopher rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that for 3 years," he admitted. "You should have done it sooner. I was an idiot. You were scared." Same thing. He pulled back to look at her, his blue eyes dark with want. "But I'm not scared anymore." "Liar. You're terrified. I can feel your heart racing." "Okay, I'm terrified. But I'm doing it anyway." Madison smiled, reaching up to trace his jaw. "That's called being brave, not stupid. With you, same thing." She laughed and pulled him in for another kiss, slower this time, sweeter. When they broke apart, she was smiling against his lips. "We should tell my family," she said. "The truth, that this started as fake but became real." Christopher tensed. "Are you sure? They deserve to know, and I'm tired of pretending. Even pretending that we're pretending." She laced her fingers through his. "I want this to be real in every way. No more lies." "Okay." He kissed her forehead. "We'll tell them together. At Christmas Eve dinner." "Christmas Eve dinner," she agreed. What neither of them knew was that Christmas Eve was going to bring more than just confessions. It was going to change everything. Christopher's POV. The next 2 days passed in a blur of family activities and stolen moments. Christopher found himself existing in a strange limbo. They'd kissed, they'd confessed their feelings, but they hadn't told anyone yet. To the family, they were still the perfect couple who'd been together for 6 months. Only Christopher and Madison knew the truth was far more complicated and far more real. The night before Christmas Eve, Christopher couldn't sleep. Again. But this time, it wasn't because of unfulfilled longing or confusion. It was anticipation. Tomorrow, they'd tell the truth. Tomorrow, everything would change. Again. He heard movement from Madison's side of the bed. The pillow wall had been officially abandoned days ago. Now they just slept together, tangled up in each other, pretending it was accidental even though they both knew better. "Can't sleep," she whispered. "No, you. My brain won't shut off." She rolled over to face him in the darkness. "I keep thinking about tomorrow. What if they're angry? What if they think we made fools of them?" "They won't." "How do you know?" "Because they've watched us fall in love in real time. Whether we were faking it or not at the beginning doesn't matter. What matters is what's real now." He felt her hand find his under the covers, their fingers intertwining. "When did you get so wise?" she asked. "About 3 years ago, when I met this writer who challenged everything I thought I knew about connection and vulnerability and what it means to really let someone in." Even in the dark, he could hear her smile. Smooth talker. "Only with you." They lay in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Madison sat up suddenly. "I can't just lie here. I need to move or think or, I don't know, something." Christopher sat up too. "What did you have in mind?" "I don't know. Go for a walk. Count sheep. Learn to juggle." He laughed and got out of bed, extending his hand. "I have a better idea." Madison's POV. Madison let Christopher pull her out of bed and into the living room. He didn't turn on any lights, just walked over to the old radio her mother kept on the shelf and turned it on low. Soft music filled the room, something slow and jazzy, the kind of song that belonged in old movies. "What are you doing?" Madison asked. "Something I've wanted to do since the night we agreed to this insane plan." He held out his hand. "Dance with me. Christopher. No audience. No performance. Just us." His eyes found hers in the dim light streaming through the windows. "Dance with me, Madison." She took his hand. He pulled her close, one hand settling on her waist, the other holding hers. Madison's free hand came up to rest on his shoulder, and they began to sway to the music. "You're a good dancer," she observed. "I took lessons. For business events." "Of course you did. What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you're annoyingly perfect at everything. I'm terrible at ice skating." "One thing. You're bad at one thing. I'm also bad at pretending I'm not completely in love with you." He pulled her closer, until there was barely any space between them. "I've been terrible at that for years." Madison rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Why didn't you tell me before all this? Fear, cowardice, the certainty that you'd never see me as anything more than a friend. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Take your pick. I was an idiot too. I convinced myself that what I felt was just normal best friend affection, that the reason my heart raced when you smiled at me was just, I don't know, caffeine. Christopher laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. Caffeine? I was in denial. It seemed logical at the time. He spun her gently, then pulled her back in. Madison went willingly, fitting against him like she was made to be there. Can I tell you something? She asked quietly. Always. That first morning, when we woke up tangled together, she felt him tense slightly. I didn't want you to let go. I pretended to be upset or surprised, but really, I just wanted to stay there forever. Madison. And every morning since then, when I wake up in your arms, I have this moment of perfect happiness before reality sets in, and I remember that this is all temporary, or it was supposed to be temporary. She pulled back to look at him. But it's not anymore, is it? This is real. This is real, he confirmed, his voice rough with emotion. This is the realest thing I've ever felt. The song changed to something even slower, more intimate. They kept dancing, barely moving now, just swaying together in the darkened living room. I'm scared about tomorrow, Madison admitted. Me too. What if everything falls apart? Christopher stopped dancing. His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. Then we'll put it back together. But Madison, I don't think it will. Your family loves you, they want you to be happy. And if you're happy with me, if we're happy together, that's all that will matter to them. When did you become so sure about us? The moment I woke up with you in my arms and realized I never wanted to wake up any other way. Madison's heart felt too full for her chest. She reached up on her toes and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, Christopher rested his forehead against hers. Stay here, he whispered. Just for a minute. Let me pretend the rest of the world doesn't exist. It doesn't, she whispered back. Right now, it's just us. They stood there in the middle of the living room, wrapped in each other's arms, swaying to music that had long since ended, existing in a moment that felt stolen from time itself. And the next morning, Christmas Eve, Madison woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. She stretched, smiling at the memory of dancing with Christopher in the dark. They'd stayed up until almost 3, talking and laughing and stealing kisses like teenagers. She found him in the kitchen making breakfast. He looked up when she entered, and his entire face transformed, that smile that was only for her. Morning, beautiful. Morning. She walked over and wrapped her arms around him from behind, pressing her face against his back. You're making eggs. I'm attempting eggs. The jury's still out on whether they're edible. You're a tech genius who runs a billion-dollar company. I think you can handle scrambled eggs. You'd think that, you'd be wrong. She laughed and released him, moving to pour coffee. They moved around each other with easy familiarity, and Madison marveled at how natural this felt. Like they'd been doing this for years. Like they were meant to do this for years more. So, Christopher said, plating the eggs, which actually looked good. Tonight's the night. We tell your family everything. Tonight's the night, Madison confirmed, accepting the plate he handed her. Are you ready? As ready as I'll ever be. He sat across from her at the small table. Although I have to admit, part of me wants to just keep lying. Tell them we've been together for 6 months like we planned. Skip the whole "this started as fake" confession. We could, Madison said slowly, but then we'd be starting this relationship with a lie, and I don't want that. Neither do I. He reached across the table to take her hand. We do this together, whatever happens. Whatever happens, she agreed. What they didn't know was that whatever happens was going to involve a lot more drama than either of them anticipated. Because the Carter family was about to get a crash course in how fake dating becomes real love. And it was going to be spectacular. The Christmas Eve dinner was being held at Madison's mother's house, which meant the place was decorated within an inch of its life. Lights everywhere, garlands on every surface, and a tree so large it probably required structural engineering approval. Madison and Christopher arrived together, hands clasped, both trying to mask their nervousness with smiles. Ready? he whispered as they approached the door. "Not even a little bit. We could run, start new lives in Canada. Tempting, but I don't think I could pull off the whole living off the grid thing. You're a writer. You could work from anywhere." "Christopher, I once cried because my Wi-Fi went down for 20 minutes. He laughed, some of the tension easing from his shoulders. "Fair point. Okay. Plan A it is. We tell them the truth." The door swung open before they could knock. Madison's grandmother stood there, resplendent in a red sweater covered in sequins and what appeared to be actual bells. "There they are! The lovebirds!" She pulled them both inside. "You're just in time. Your mother is having a minor breakdown because the turkey is taking too long, and Andrew is interrogating the neighbor's cat about suspicious behavior." "That sounds normal," Madison said. "For this family? Absolutely." Her grandmother winked. "Now come on. We're playing a game before dinner." Madison and Christopher exchanged glances. Games in this family were never simple. They found the rest of the family in the living room. Layla looked better, still sad, but lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. Her mother was indeed fussing over the turkey situation, and Andrew was at the window with binoculars muttering about feline espionage. "Madison, Christopher," her mother rushed over. "Thank goodness. We need even teams for the game." "What game?" Christopher asked cautiously. "The newlywed game, well, the couples version. We did it last year and it was such fun." Madison felt Christopher's hand tighten on hers. Of course this would be the game. They settled onto the couch, Madison's mother hosting with unnecessary gravitas. Layla volunteered to keep score, and Andrew put away his binoculars with obvious reluctance. "First question," her mother announced. "Madison, what would Christopher say is your most annoying habit?" Madison thought about it. "That I leave coffee cups everywhere? Or that I rewrite the same paragraph 17 times? Christopher, what's your answer?" "That she apologizes for things that aren't her fault," he said softly, looking at Madison. "She says sorry when someone bumps into her, when the weather is bad, when things beyond her control go wrong. I wish she knew she didn't have to apologize for existing in the world." The room went quiet. "Well," her mother said, clearing her throat, "that's in very specific and sweet 1 point. "Christopher," Andrew said, leaning forward, "what's Madison's biggest fear?" "Being forgotten," Christopher answered immediately. "She's afraid that after she's gone nobody will remember she was here, that her stories won't matter, that she won't have left any real mark on the world." Madison's eyes stung. He'd said this before, but hearing it again, knowing he really understood her that deeply, made her chest ache. "How do you know that?" her mother asked, puzzled. "Madison's never told me that." "She didn't have to tell me," Christopher said. "I pay attention." Madison squeezed his hand and he squeezed back. The game continued. Every answer Christopher gave was thoughtful, detailed, showing how well he knew her. And Madison knew him just as well. His fear of failure, his difficulty letting people in, his secret love of terrible action movies. By the end, they had a perfect score. "You two are disgustingly in sync," Andrew observed. "It's actually impressive, and slightly nauseating." "Thank you," Madison said. "That wasn't a compliment. I'm choosing to take it as one." Dinner was the usual Carter family chaos. Too much food, too many conversations happening at once, and her grandmother telling increasingly inappropriate stories about her youth that made everyone uncomfortable. But throughout it all, Madison felt Christopher's presence beside her like an anchor. His hand on her knee under the table, his quiet laughter at her grandmother's stories, the way he helped clear plates without being asked. This was real. He was real. They were real. After dessert, as everyone settled in the living room with coffee and pie, Madison caught Christopher's eye. He nodded slightly. It was time. "Everyone?" Madison stood up, her heart pounding. "Christopher and I have something we need to tell you." The room fell silent. Her mother looked excited. Her grandmother looked knowing. Andrew looked suspicious. "We're getting married," her grandmother guessed. "No! You're having a baby," her mother gasped. "Mum, no. You're secretly royalty and have to return to your kingdom," Andrew offered. "What? No, can everyone just—" Madison took a deep breath. "The truth is, Christopher and I haven't been dating for 6 months." Confusion rippled through the room. "What do you mean?" Layla asked. Madison looked at Christopher, who stood and took her hand. "When Madison called me about coming here for Christmas," he said, "she asked me to pretend to be her boyfriend. It was supposed to be fake. A way to get her family to stop pressuring her about being single." Her mother's face went pale. "You were faking?" "At first," Madison said quickly. "But you lied to us?" Her mother's voice rose. "This whole time? Everything was a lie? That's not... It became real." Madison tried to explain, but her mother was standing now, hurt and anger warring on her face. "How could you do this? Make fools of us? Let us believe..." Her mother pressed a hand to her chest. "I thought you'd finally found someone. I thought you were happy." "I am happy," Madison insisted. "That's what I'm trying to tell you. It started as fake, but it became real. We fell in love. Actually fell in love." "How convenient," Andrew said dryly. "Right when you got caught." "We weren't caught," Christopher said firmly. "We chose to tell you the truth because we don't want to start our relationship with a lie." "Start your relationship?" her grandmother said. "So you're saying for the past 2 weeks everything we saw, the looks, the touches, the way you couldn't keep your eyes off each other, that was all acting?" "No," Madison said desperately. "That's what I'm trying to explain. It started as acting, but somewhere along the way it became real. I don't know exactly when. Maybe the first morning when we woke up tangled together. Maybe when he danced with me when nobody was watching. Maybe it was always real and we were just too scared to admit it." "This is ridiculous," her mother said, shaking her head. "You can't fake your way into real love?" "Why not?" Layla's voice cut through the tension. Everyone turned to look at her. "Why can't you fake your way into real love? They spent 2 weeks living as a couple, waking up together, making decisions together, learning each other's habits and fears and dreams. That's more intimacy than some people have in years of dating." "Layla..." "No, Mom. Listen." Layla stood, walking over to Madison. "I watched them. Every day. The way they looked at each other when they thought no one was watching. The way Christopher brought her coffee without asking. The way Madison laughed at his jokes, even when they weren't funny. The way they fit together like they'd been doing this forever." She took Madison's hand. "That wasn't fake. Maybe it started that way, but what I saw, that was real love." Madison's throat was tight. "Thank you," she whispered. Her mother looked between them, conflict clear on her face. "I don't know what to think. I need a moment." She left the room, and the silence that followed was deafening. Christopher's arm came around Madison's waist. "I'm sorry," he said to the remaining family. "We never meant to hurt anyone. We didn't expect this to happen." "Life's funny that way," her grandmother said, and there was something almost approving in her voice. "You make plans and then love laughs in your face." "So you're not angry?" Madison asked. "Oh, I'm furious. You lied to us, made us look like fools." Her grandmother smiled. "But I'm also not blind. I've been married 53 years before my husband passed. I know what real love looks like, and you two?" She pointed at them. "You have it, whether you meant to or not." Andrew was still frowning. "I don't like being deceived." "We know," Christopher said. Andrew continued slowly. "I also ran a background check on you the first day you arrived." "You what?" Madison yelped. "I'm thorough. Sue me." He pulled out his phone. "And according to my research, you've been friends with Madison for 5 years. You show up at her apartment multiple times a week. You've been her emergency contact for 3 years. You attend every book launch she has. You've never dated anyone seriously in all that time." He looked up. "So either you're the world's best friend, or you've been in love with her way longer than 2 weeks. Christopher met his gaze evenly. 3 years. I've been in love with her for 3 years. Then this fake dating thing was just you finally getting your chance, Andrew concluded. Yes. And you took it. I did. Smart man. Andrew sat back. I'm still mad you lied, but I respect the strategy. Madison didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Her family was insane. Absolutely insane. And she loved them for it. Now she just had to convince her mother. Madison found her mother on the back porch, wrapped in a coat, staring at the Christmas lights strung along the fence. Mom? Her mother didn't turn around. I prepared that pink room for you, bought extra blankets, made sure it was comfortable, because I thought my daughter would be spending Christmas alone again, and I wanted her to feel loved, even if she felt lonely. Madison's chest tightened. Mom, and then you showed up with this wonderful man, this handsome, successful, kind man who looked at you like you hung the moon, and I was so happy, so relieved, because finally, my daughter had found someone who saw how special she was. He does see that, Madison said softly. That part wasn't a lie. Her mother turned, tears on her cheeks. But you thought you had to lie to me, that you had to fake a relationship rather than just come home and be yourself. Do you know how that makes me feel? That I made you so uncomfortable about being single that you felt you had to hire a fake boyfriend. I didn't hire him. He's my best friend. Which makes it worse. You felt you had to drag your best friend into this charade because I couldn't just accept you as you are. Her mother wiped her eyes. I'm the one who should be apologizing. I pushed too hard, made you feel like you weren't enough on your own, and I'm so sorry, sweetheart. You've always been enough. More than enough. Madison felt tears spilling down her own cheeks. I know you were just worried about me. I was. But that's not your burden to carry. You're 27, brilliant, successful, talented. You've written books that make people believe in love. That's more than most people accomplish in a lifetime. Her mother cupped Madison's face. And if you want to be single, that's okay. If you want to be with Christopher, that's okay too. As long as you're happy and you're not lying to yourself or to me. I'm not lying, I really do love him, Mum. I think I have for years, but I was too scared to admit it. And yes, this started as a ridiculous plan, but it became real. He became real. We became real. Her mother studied her face for a long moment. You're sure? This isn't just convenience or proximity or... Mom, I wake up in his arms every morning, and it feels like coming home. He knows me better than I know myself sometimes. He makes me laugh even when I want to cry. He supports my dreams without trying to manage them. He's my best friend and the love of my life, and I didn't even realize those could be the same person until 2 weeks ago. Madison took her mother's hands. I know we started this in the worst possible way, but I've never been more sure of anything. Her mother pulled her into a tight hug. Then I'm happy for you. Truly. Even if you did give me a minor heart attack with that confession. That seems to be a family trait. Drama runs in our blood. We prefer emotionally expressive. Her mother pulled back, smiling through tears. Now let's go back inside before your grandmother drinks all the wine and starts telling stories about her wild youth that nobody needs to hear. They returned to find Christopher in the hallway, looking anxious. He straightened when he saw them. Mrs. Carter, I want to apologize. Oh, stop. Madison's mother waved a hand. You love my daughter. You've been her friend for 5 years. You agreed to this insane plan because you couldn't say no to her. If anything, that proves you're perfect for her. She needs someone who can keep up with her chaos. I do have a lot of chaos, Madison agreed. And you, her mother turned to Christopher, need someone who challenges you and makes you laugh and drags you out of your perfectly organized life sometimes. So really, you're both disasters who found each other. I call that fate. Our statistically improbable luck, Andrew called from the living room. Andrew, please stop eavesdropping, her mother called back. I'm detecting. It's different. Christopher was smiling now, relief clear on his face. So, we're okay? We're okay. Her mother patted his cheek. But if you hurt my daughter, I'll have to hurt you. I'm small, but I'm vicious when properly motivated. I would expect nothing less. They returned to the living room to find everyone pretending they hadn't been listening at the door. Her grandmother was the first to speak. So, are we doing gifts now, or are we waiting for more dramatic revelations? Because I have some stories about my second husband that would really spice things up. Grandma, you've only had one husband, Layla said. That you know of. Mom! Madison's mother gasped. I'm kidding. Probably. The 60s were very blurry. The tension broke. Everyone laughed, and suddenly it was like nothing had happened. They moved on to gifts, to Christmas music, to her grandmother's increasingly wild stories that may or may not have been true. But throughout it all, Christopher's hand stayed in Madison's, and when she caught his eye across the room, the look he gave her made her heart skip. Later, after everyone had left and they were cleaning up, Madison's mother pulled them both aside. I have one question, she said. When you two finally got together, really together, where did it happen? What was the moment? Madison and Christopher looked at each other. We haven't, Madison admitted. Not fully. We've kissed, we've confessed our feelings, but we wanted to wait until this was all settled, until we knew we were on solid ground. Her mother's eyes went wide. How you mean you've been sleeping in the same bed for 2 weeks and you haven't— Mom, I'm just impressed by the restraint. Your father and I would have lasted maybe 3 days. Mom, please stop talking. I'm just saying, that's real love, being able to wait, to want to do things right. Her mother smiled. Okay, I'm done embarrassing you now. Mostly. I can't make any promises. As they drove back to the apartment that night, Madison felt lighter than she had in days. The truth was out. Her family knew, and they were still together. That went better than expected, Christopher said. Your bar for better than expected must be very low. I was anticipating pitchforks and torches. We got tears and acceptance. I call that a win. Madison laughed, lacing her fingers through his. Thank you for doing this, for being patient with my crazy family, for loving me even when I'm a mess. Especially when you're a mess. He brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. Are you ready to go home? Home. The apartment they'd been sharing, the bed they'd been sleeping in, the life they'd been building, piece by piece, without even realizing it. Yeah, she said softly. I'm ready to go home. What neither of them said, what they both understood, was that home wasn't the apartment. It was each other. And tonight, they were finally going to stop holding back. Tonight, everything was going to change. Again. The apartment was quiet when they returned, filled only with the soft glow of the Christmas lights they'd strung up days ago. Madison set her purse down, suddenly nervous in a way she hadn't been all night. This was it. They'd told the truth. They'd survived the fallout. And now they were alone, with nothing between them except 2 weeks of wanting and waiting. Want some tea? Christopher asked, and she could hear the tension in his voice too. No. Madison turned to face him. I don't want tea. He stood in the middle of the living room, looking at her with those blue eyes that saw through every defense she'd ever built. What do you want? You. The word came out barely above a whisper. I want you. Something flickered in his expression. Heat, desire, and something deeper. Something that made her breath catch. Madison. He crossed to her in 3 strides, his hands framing her face. Are you sure? Because once we do this, once we cross this line, I won't be able to go back. I won't be able to pretend you're just my friend anymore. Good, she breathed, because I don't want you to pretend. I want this. I want you. All of you. He kissed her then, deep and thorough. One hand sliding into her hair while the other wrapped around her waist, pulling her flush against him. Madison melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, desperate to eliminate any space between them. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Christopher rested his forehead against hers. Bedroom, he murmured. I want to do this right. He took her hand and led her down the hallway, and Madison's heart was beating so hard she was certain he could hear it. When they reached the bedroom, he turned to face her, his expression soft but intense. I need you to know something, he said quietly. I've imagined this moment for 3 years. And now that it's finally happening, I'm terrified of rushing it, of not making it perfect for you. Madison reached up to cup his face, feeling the slight stubble under her palms. Christopher, it's already perfect. Because it's you. Because it's us. He kissed her again, slower this time, savoring. His hands moved to the zipper of her dress, and he paused, asking permission with his eyes. She nodded, and he slowly drew the zipper down, the sound loud in the quiet room. The dress pulled at her feet, and Madison fought the urge to cover herself. Christopher's eyes traveled over her, not with lust alone, but with something deeper, reverence, wonder, like he was memorizing every detail. You're so beautiful, he whispered. So damn beautiful it hurts to look at you. His hands skimmed up her arms, leaving goosebumps in their wake. He traced the line of her collarbone down over her shoulders, and Madison shivered despite the warmth in the room. Cold? He asked. No, the opposite. He smiled, that slow, devastating smile, and pulled his own shirt over his head. Madison had seen him shirtless before, but this was different. This time she could touch. This time she was allowed to want. Her hands explored the planes of his chest, the defined muscles of his abdomen, feeling him tense and relax under her touch. She traced the line of his ribs, marveling at the way his breath hitched when her fingers skimmed just above his waistband. "Madison," he groaned, "you're killing me." "Good. Now you know how I've felt for 2 weeks." He laughed, but the sound dissolved into a gasp as she pressed a kiss to his chest, right over his heart. His hands tangled in her hair, holding her close. "Bed," he managed. "Now." They tumbled onto the mattress together, a tangle of limbs and laughter and breathless kisses. Christopher hovered over her, taking his time, mapping her body with his hands and mouth, like he was learning a language only they spoke. He kissed her neck, her collarbone, the sensitive spot behind her ear that made her gasp. His hands explored reverently, asking permission with every touch, making sure she was with him every step of the way. "Tell me what you want," he murmured against her skin. "You. Just you. You have me. You've always had me." He kissed his way down her body, his hands following, and Madison felt like she was coming apart at the seams. Every touch was deliberate, worshipful, like he was trying to show her with his body what his words couldn't express. When he finally settled between her legs, he looked up at her, his blue eyes dark with desire, but also something softer. "I love you," he said. "I need you to know that. This isn't just physical for me. It's everything." "I love you too," she whispered, pulling him up for a kiss. "Show me, please." He did. Slowly, carefully, giving her time to adjust, his forehead pressed against hers as they breathed together. Madison wrapped her legs around his waist, her hands gripping his shoulders, and felt something slot into place, like they were two puzzle pieces finally finding their match. They moved together, finding a rhythm that was theirs alone. Christopher whispered her name like a prayer, his hands never stopping their reverent exploration. Madison felt tears prick her eyes at the intensity of it, not just the physical pleasure, but the emotional connection, the vulnerability, the trust. This was what love felt like, not just attraction or compatibility or convenience. This was souls recognizing each other. This was home. When they finally fell apart together, Christopher caught her cry with a kiss, and they clung to each other like drowning people finding shore. Afterwards, they lay tangled together, hearts still racing, skin slick with sweat. Christopher pulled the blanket over them and gathered Madison close, pressing kisses to her temple, her cheek, her shoulder, anywhere he could reach. "That was—" Madison started but couldn't find the words. "Yeah," he agreed, understanding perfectly. "It was. I don't want to move ever again." "Good, because I'm not letting go." He tightened his arms around her. "This is where you belong. Right here. Always." Madison felt tears slip down her cheeks. Happy tears, overwhelmed tears. Christopher noticed immediately, pulling back to look at her with concern. "Did I hurt you?" "No, God, no. The opposite." She wiped her eyes, laughing at herself. "I'm just happy. Overwhelmingly, terrifyingly happy. And I didn't know it could feel like this." Christopher brushed away her tears with his thumbs, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "Neither did I. I thought I knew what I was missing all these years, but I didn't. Not really, not until right now." They stayed awake for hours, talking and touching and stealing kisses. They talked about the past, all the moments they'd missed, all the signs they'd ignored. They talked about the future, where they'd live, how they'd make this work, what came next. "Move in with me," Christopher said suddenly, officially, not just for 2 weeks, but for real, for always. "Your place or mine. I don't care. We'll get a new place, one that's ours, with a huge closet for your clothes and a library for your books and a kitchen I'll ruin while trying to make you breakfast every morning." Madison laughed, pressing a kiss to his chest. "That sounds perfect, except for the kitchen ruining part. Maybe we invest in cooking lessons?" "Deal." As dawn began to break outside, painting the room in soft pink and gold light, Madison felt Christopher's hand find hers under the blanket, their fingers intertwining. "Merry Christmas," he whispered. "Merry Christmas," she whispered back. It was Christmas morning. They'd survived 2 weeks of fake dating, family chaos, and finally admitting the truth. And now, wrapped in each other's arms as the sun rose on a new day, Madison realized something. The best love stories weren't the ones she wrote. They were the ones she lived. 6 months later, Madison stood in front of her laptop, staring at the final page of her manuscript. She'd just typed the end on what might be her best book yet, a story about two best friends who fake a relationship for the holidays and discover that sometimes the best love stories are the ones you never see coming. Art imitating life, or life imitating art. She wasn't sure which anymore. Her phone buzzed with a text from Christopher. "Christopher, come to the apartment tonight, 7 p.m. I have a surprise." Madison smiled. They'd officially moved into a new place together 3 months ago. A beautiful loft with floor-to-ceiling windows, a library for her books, and a kitchen that Christopher had already nearly burned down twice. But they'd kept the small apartment where it all happened, unable to let it go. It held too many memories. "Madison, the apartment. Is everything okay?" "Christopher, everything's perfect. Just trust me." She did. Completely. "Ça c'est." When Madison arrived at the apartment that evening, she found the door unlocked and candlelight flickering from inside. Her heart started racing. "Christopher?" "In here," his voice called from the living room. She pushed open the door and stopped, her hand flying to her mouth. The room was transformed. Candles everywhere. Rose petals scattered across the floor. The small table set for two with what looked like an elaborate home-cooked meal. Well, elaborate for Christopher's skill level, which meant he'd probably had help. And in the center of it all stood Christopher, wearing a suit, looking nervous and hopeful, and so handsome it made her chest ache. "What is all this?" she asked. "Sit." He pulled out her chair. "First we eat. I made your favorite. Well, I had help from a chef friend. Okay, the chef made it and I reheated it. But I was emotionally involved in the process." Madison laughed, sitting down. "This is already perfect." Throughout dinner, Christopher seemed nervous, kept fidgeting, checking his watch, making sure her wine glass was full. Madison pretended not to notice, even though her heart was pounding with anticipation. After they finished eating, Christopher stood and walked over to the old radio. He turned it on, and soft jazz filled the room, the same music that had played the night they'd danced together in the dark. "Dance with me," he said, extending his hand. "Again?" she asked, but she was already standing. "Always." They swayed together in the candlelight, and Madison felt tears prick her eyes. This place, this small apartment where they'd slept in the same bed and built pillow walls and slowly fallen in love, would always be special to them. "You remember the night we danced here?" Christopher asked softly. "When it was 3 in the morning and we couldn't sleep? I remember everything about that night. I told myself I was dancing with you to calm your nerves, to help you relax." He pulled back slightly to look at her. "But the truth is, I danced with you because I wanted to hold you. Because even then, before we'd admitted anything, I knew I never wanted to let go." "Christopher, let me finish." He took a shaky breath. "Madison, you came into my life 5 years ago and turned everything upside down. You made me laugh, you challenged me. You saw past the CEO, past the carefully constructed image, and you just saw me. And you liked me anyway." Tears were sliding down Madison's cheeks now. "These past 6 months have been the best of my life," he continued. "Living with you, building a life with you, waking up every morning and remembering that I get to keep you, that this is real, that you're mine and I'm yours." He stopped dancing and stepped back. Then, slowly, he lowered himself to one knee. Madison's hands flew to her mouth, her breath catching. Christopher pulled out a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a stunning ring, simple, elegant, so perfectly her that she almost sobbed. "Madison Carter, you write stories about love for millions of people. You create happily ever afters for a living. But I don't want to be a character in one of your books." His voice was thick with emotion. "I want to be the real thing, the person you choose every day, the one who holds you when you're sad and celebrates with you when you're happy and brings you coffee without asking and loves every messy, brilliant, beautiful part of you." "Yes," Madison whispered. "I haven't asked yet," he said with a watery laugh. "I don't care. The answer is yes. Madison Carter, will you marry me? Will you let me be your real life happily ever after?" "Yes, yes. 1,000 times yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, and then he was standing, and she was in his arms, and they were both crying and laughing at the same time. "I love you," she said between kisses. "I love you so much. I love you too. Always have. Always will." They held each other in the middle of that small apartment, surrounded by candlelight and memories, and Madison thought about how strange life was. How 2 weeks of fake dating had led to the most real thing she'd ever experienced. How sometimes the best love stories were the ones you never planned. 1 year later, Madison sat on the porch of the house they'd bought together, a charming place on the outskirts of the city, with a big yard and a reading nook and enough space for the family they were building. Her hand rested on her belly, now round with 6 months of pregnancy. She felt the baby move and smiled, pressing gently where a tiny foot pushed back. "Stubborn already," she said to the bump. "Just like your father." "I heard that," Christopher said, stepping out onto the porch with 2 glasses of lemonade. He handed her one and settled into the chair beside her, his hand immediately going to her belly. "How's my girl today? Your girl is tired of being pregnant and wants this baby out." "I was talking about the baby." "She's fine," kicking up a storm. Madison took his hand and placed it where their daughter was currently doing what felt like gymnastics. "Feel that?" Christopher's face transformed, wonder and joy, and such overwhelming love that Madison felt tears prick her eyes. He did that to her constantly now, made her cry with happiness at the most random moments. "Hey there, little one," he murmured to her belly. "It's Dad, just checking in. Your mom says you're being stubborn, but I think you're just practicing for the world. Can't wait to meet you." The baby kicked again as if in response. Madison watched her husband, talk to their daughter, and felt so overwhelmingly grateful she could barely breathe. They'd gotten married in the spring, a small ceremony with family and friends, held in the apartment building's courtyard where it all began. Her mother had cried through the entire ceremony. Her grandmother had made inappropriate jokes during the reception. Andrew had given a best man speech that included a detailed timeline of their suspicious behavior leading up to the fake dating scheme. Layla, who'd since started dating a kind physical therapist she'd met at the gym, had been her maid of honor. It had been perfect, chaotic and emotional and absolutely perfect. "What are you thinking about?" Christopher asked, looking up at her. "How different my life is now. How 1.5 years ago I was dreading Christmas. And now," she gestured around them, "now I have all this. A husband, a baby on the way, a life I didn't even know I wanted." "Thank God for your family's excessive Christmas expectations," Christopher said with a grin. "Thank God you agreed to the world's most ridiculous plan. Best decision I ever made." He leaned over to kiss her, gentle and sweet. "Well, second best. The best was telling you I loved you. You're so cheesy. You love it." "I really do." They sat together as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Christopher's hand stayed on her belly, feeling their daughter move. Madison's hand covered his, holding it there. "You know what's funny?" Madison said. "I spent years writing romance novels about people finding love in unexpected ways, and then I lived it. Are you going to write about us?" "I already did. Just finished the manuscript. It's about 2 best friends who fake a relationship for Christmas and discover that sometimes the person you've been looking for has been there all along." "How does it end?" "Happily, obviously," she smiled. "With a house, a baby, and a lifetime of loving each other even when it's messy and complicated and scary. Sounds realistic. The best love stories are." Christopher stood and held out his hand. "Come on, let's go inside. I'll make dinner." "You'll burn dinner." "Probably. But you'll love me anyway. Always." As they walked into their house, their home, Madison thought about everything that had led them here, the fake dating, the real feelings, the chaos and confession, and finally, the courage to choose love. Her grandmother had been right. Life was funny. You made plans, and then love laughed in your face. But sometimes, if you were very lucky, that laughter turned into the best sound you'd ever heard, the sound of coming home. Leave your comment and share this story with someone special. It truly helps us keep bringing new stories to you. And if you want to follow every chapter of this emotional journey, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Your support makes all the difference.